Greetings and welcome back to Room 303 in our chats with Emily as we are calling our readings through the poetry of Emily Dickinson. We are in the Johnson edition. We turn now to poem 723, It Tossed and Tossed. When this one was published in 1891, it was actually called Shipwreck. It is a tragedy that works in many ways as a powerful spiritual metaphor. In many ways, we're back to our study of theodicy. Why must there be pain? Why must there be suffering in this world? And to what degree is struggling with a concern in your life kind of like a little brig or a little ship trying to make its way through the storm? You'll remember in our study of Shakespeare's Sonnet 116, he says about love, it is the star to every wandering bark whose worth's unknown, although his height be taken. This idea of a wandering bark or a brig or a tiny ship that can somehow be taken by the waves is going to be a profound metaphor. And of course, that's a very ancient kind of word picture that Emily will be playing with. Now, our assumptions are that you've been following our stuff at learnstrong.net. Down that left-hand side, Chats with Emily is our playlist. I'm hopeful that you worked through our set of introductory comments. I'm hopeful that you worked with us through our preceding 722 poems. We just finished with 722 Sweet Mountains. Now, the question of this poem is actually not about pain or suffering. The question of the poem is really, does nature seem to care at all? And the spiritual struggle that obviously culminates with death will be central to how we read this poem. This is how she says it. It tossed and tossed, a little brig I knew, or took by blast. It spun and groped, delirious for morn. It slipped and slipped, as one that drunken stepped, its white foot tripped, then dropped from sight. Ah, brig, good night to crew and you, the ocean's heart, too smooth, too blue to break for you. Now the poem, it seems to me, has two parts. The first, of course, is this the ship going, across the ocean in the waves, and obviously about to go down, but not yet going down. By the way, notice the repetition here with tossed and tossed, spurn and spurn, slipped and slipped, as the ship is struggling to try and stay afloat. Notice it will begin with the pronoun it, and then we get to a little brig I knew. This brig will take us back to our study of 368, you'll remember, for brig like mine. The identification of Emily with a little ship all alone stuck out on the ocean. Notice it's a brig that she says, I knew. Now, this is the giveaway, because Emily never, to our knowledge, got on a ship and sailed anywhere. Certainly never sailed across the Atlantic or anything like that we know of. But notice she'll say it's a brig I knew. And in that moment, the fact that she says, I knew this ship, suggests that we're not talking about a physical ship, but rather what? Maybe journey of the soul, we might say. And then she says, or took by blast. In other words, the storms of life have become so powerful that now her little soul, her little brig, her little ship is first tossing, then spinning, and then finally slipping before it finally trips and goes down. Notice it spun and spun, the helplessness that's represented in the repetitions here, and groped, delirious for morn. Now, this use of the word delirious, you'll remember from 237, but this use of the word groped is fascinating. It takes us back to our study of 419. We grow accustomed to the dark when light is put away, as when the neighbor holds the lamp to witness her goodbye. A moment we uncertain step for newness of the night, then fit our vision to the dark and meet the road erect. And so of larger darkness those evenings of the brain, when not a moon disclose a sign or star come out within, the bravest grope a little, and sometimes hit a tree directly in the forehead. But as they learn to see either the darkness alters or something in the sight adjusts itself to midnight, and life steps almost straight. This poem, you'll remember when we did it, that key word was almost. Now, grope, of course, we saw in 430. We saw it again in 506. Obviously, now we're seeing it in 723. We'll see this word grope again in 761 and 909. We'll see it in 1062 when we get there, and her use of it will be absolute. He scanned it, staggered, dropped the loop to past or period, caught helpless at a sense as if his mind were going blind, groped up to see if God was there, groped backward at himself, caressed the trigger absently, and wandered out of life. So we're gonna be pushed at 1062 when we meet that one. And 1555, it's there in the first line. I groped for him before I knew, with solemn nameless need, all other bounty sudden chafe. For this foreshadowed food which others taste and spurn and sneer, though I within suppose that consecrated it could be the only food that grows. Now, again, back to this idea of groping, right, as the delirious longing, deeply longing for more. In other words, we're in the dark, we're in the waves, the boat is starting to really have its problems, and then finally it will slip. Notice again the repetition. It slipped, and then an interesting word picture as one that drunken stepped. In other words, staggering, groping, and now the word picture of staggering or tripping. It's white foot tripped, right? Now we're going on our side. Then dropped from sight. Now, you'll remember our study of 280 and this use of the word dropped. I think it's significant that we come back to this poem. I felt a funeral in my brain, and mourners to and fro kept treading, notice the repetition in this poem too, till it seemed that sense was breaking through, and when they all were seated, a service like a drum kept beating till I thought my mind was going numb, and then I heard them lift a box and creak across my soul with those same boots of lead again. Then space began to toll, as all the heavens were a bell, and being but an ear, and I in silence some strange race wrecked, solitary here. And again, these two poems have to be read, I think, together. And then a plank in reason broke, and I dropped down, and hit a world at every plunge, and finished knowing. Then, as we commented when we did that poem, the end of that poem is uncertain as to exactly drop to where. Notice in this poem, dropping from sight. Then the use of which, as we've seen already in several poems, is almost like a sigh of a kind. It takes us back to the alas of T.S. Eliot's hollow men. We are the hollow men, we are the stuffed men, leaning together, headpiece filled with straw. Alas, our dry voices when we whisper together are quiet and meaningless. That alas, or this it's like a sigh. Brig, dash. Good night, notice both capitalized. To crew and you. So notice, the emphasis is interesting on first of all, the crew, but then of course the ship itself, which have left some to obviously think about this being the representation of body and soul. The ocean's heart, too smooth, dash, too blue, notice again the repetition, dash, to break for you. Notice again the T-O-O versus the T-O, to break for you. In other words, the ocean never weeps as it takes down the sailors in the boat, which reminds us in some ways, of course, of the naturalism of Stephen Crane in Red Badge of Courage. At 2A, I think the message here is that sometimes life is tragic, and nature doesn't seem to care at all about that tragedy. At 2B, well, obviously the repetitions work rather well here, emphasizing obviously the helplessness of the little craft. We mentioned at 3A, we mentioned Crane's Red Badge of Courage. But I'd like to go back to our study. We call our series here Chats with Emily. Of course, this one was preceded by Talks with Walt, where we did all of the poems of Whitman's deathbed edition of Leaves of Grass. And you'll remember that we did this little poem, Patrolling Barnegat. And her contemporary, Walt Whitman, was playing a very similar game in Patrolling Barnegat. Again, we've given full lectures at learnstrong.net if you're interested in running that to ground. Wild the storm and the sea high running, steady the roar of the gale with incessant undertone muttering, shouts of demonic laughter fitfully piercing and pealing, waves, air, midnight, their savagest trinity lashing out in the shadows, their milk-white combs careening on beachy slush and sand spirits of snow fear slanting, where through the murk the easterly death wind breasting, through cutting swirl and spray watchful and firm advancing. That in the distance, is that a wreck? Is the red signal flaring? Slush and sand to the beach, tireless till daylight winding. Steadily, slowly, through hoarse roar, never remitting, along the midnight ease by those milk-white combs careening, a group of dim, weird forms struggling, the night confronting, that savage trinity, warily watching. Finally, at 3B, what was a time in your life, just to try and make this poem real to you, what was a time in your life when your brig struggled and was getting ready to go down? Thank you.